How safe is Christmas as we know it? Beneath the lights and carols lie stories we'd rather not uncover. Today I'll tell you about a box that should never have been opened and the terror it unleashed on a small town. Now, turn off the lights, make sure nothing strange is around you, and prepare to hear the tale of Krindle, the cursed elf. One warning: once you hear his story, you won't be able to forget it. Are you ready? It was a cold December night in the small town of Pinewood. Snow blanketed the streets like a white mantle, and Christmas lights twinkled on every corner. The air was filled with the sweet aroma of freshly baked cookies and the echo of carols resonating from the houses. However, that Christmas, something dark lurked in the shadows. In the center of the town stood an antique shop called Treasures of the Past. The owner, Mr. Grimsby, was a solitary, reserved old man who spent his days surrounded by ancient objects, each with its own story. In the early weeks of December, a wooden box mysteriously arrived at his shop. It had no sender or markings indicating its origin, just a worn red ribbon and a dusty tag that read, "Do not open before Christmas." The box emanated an unsettling energy. Though Grimsby was superstitious by nature, he couldn't resist his curiosity. He placed it on a shelf at the back of the shop, but every time he passed it, a shiver ran down his spine. He often heard faint murmurs, as if something inside the box was calling to him. On December 23rd, as he was closing the shop, the murmurs grew louder. Terrified, Grimsby decided to put an end to the mystery. With trembling hands, he untied the red ribbon and lifted the lid. Inside, he found a small porcelain elf. It had eyes as black as night and a twisted smile that seemed to mock him. The elf wore a green and red outfit typical of Christmas, but there was something disturbingly sinister about its expression. As he held the elf, the shop lights flickered, and an icy chill filled the room. Suddenly, the elf moved its head slightly and whispered, "Thank you for freeing me." The old man dropped the elf, stepping back in horror. The figure lay motionless on the floor, but Grimsby felt that something terrible had been unleashed. That night, the town of Pinewood began to change. By morning, decorations in several houses were found destroyed. Christmas trees were toppled, lights torn from walls, and small barefoot footprints were visible in the snow outside the homes. The villagers assumed pranksters were to blame, but the incidents became more sinister. On December 24th, Christmas Eve, children began to disappear. The first was Tommy, an 8-year-old boy. His parents searched for him desperately, but all they found was a small red cap on his bed and the same barefoot tracks leading into the forest. Next, Emily, a 6-year-old girl, vanished. Panic gripped the villagers. They locked their doors and windows, lighting candles to ward off the darkness. No one knew who or what was behind the disappearances, but whispers about a cursed elf began to spread. Racked with guilt, Grimsby tried to dispose of the elf, but no matter how many times he threw it away or burned it, the figure reappeared in his shop, always in the same spot. Desperate, he decided to investigate its origin. At the bottom of the box, he found an old scroll. As he read, his blood ran cold. Whoever frees the Christmas elf must pay with the souls of the town's children. The curse can only be broken by returning it to the place where it was created. But beware, the elf will not allow itself to be imprisoned again without a fight. The scroll also bore a name, Krindle, the cursed elf, Grimsby recalled. Hearing legends about Krindle in his youth, it was said that a lonely toy maker, consumed with hatred for Christmas, had created the elf to spread chaos. However, a group of priests had managed to trap it in a magical box centuries ago. No one knew how it had ended up in Pinewood. Grimsby sought help from Evelyn, an elderly woman known for her knowledge of witchcraft and legends. Upon hearing the story, Evelyn turned pale. "This is worse than I imagined. Grimsby, Krindle feeds on innocence and the souls of children. If we don't act before midnight, not only will the children vanish, but his power will grow. Evelyn explained that the only place where the elf could be trapped again was an abandoned toy factory on the outskirts of town. This was where the toy maker had created Krindle, and the location was imbued with his energy. But there's a problem, Evelyn warned. Each step toward the factory will be a battle. Krindle will do everything to stop you. Grimsby and Evelyn prepared to face Krindle. They placed the elf inside a reinforced box and began their journey to the factory. The forest surrounding the town was dark and silent, but as they ventured deeper, sinister laughter and whispers echoed around them. Shadows seemed to move between the trees, and more than once they saw glowing eyes watching from the distance. Suddenly, the box containing the elf began to shake violently. The hinges creaked, and a piercing scream erupted from within. "You will not take me back," shrieked Krindle. Evelyn began reciting a protective spell, but the box shattered into pieces, and the elf emerged, growing to the size of a child. Its eyes glowed red, and its porcelain hands now resembled claws. Grimsby and Evelyn ran as the elf pursued them, laughing and hurling objects that materialized out of thin air. They finally reached the factory, a decrepit structure covered in ivy. The doors groaned as they opened, revealing an interior filled with rusted machinery and abandoned toys. Evelyn began preparing the ritual to trap the elf. She drew a circle of salt and lit candles around an ancient urn they found in the factory. But Krindle wasn't going down without a fight. The elf summoned shadowy figures, small deformed creatures that attacked Grimsby while Evelyn recited the spell. Grimsby fought valiantly, using whatever he could find as a weapon. Finally, he managed to push Krindle into the salt circle. The elf screamed in fury, unable to cross the barrier. "You will never trap me again," it howled as its body began to crumble. Evelyn completed the spell, and the elf was sucked into the urn, along with the shadows it had summoned. A flash of light filled the factory, and then all was silent. When they returned to the town, they found the missing children asleep in their beds, safe and sound. The villagers couldn't comprehend what had happened, but Grimsby and Evelyn knew they had done the right thing. The urn was sealed and buried in a secret location, far from the reach of any curious soul. Still, every Christmas, some villagers claim to hear faint laughter coming from the forest, and if you listen closely, you might hear a whisper, "One day, I will return." Thank you for joining us in this chilling story. Remember, here at Horror Moon, you'll always find tales that challenge your imagination and push you to the edge of fear. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and share it with other horror enthusiasts. We'll see you in the next story, under the light of the horror moon. Until then, turn off the lights, lock the doors, and remember, you never know what might be lurking in the darkness. Good night, if you can sleep.